Hello, friend. You're welcome to this discussion on chapter 2, which is basically literature review. I want to show you in the next few minutes how to do it in the context of research in economics and other related courses. I remain your facilitator, Dr. Marco Achukwu. All right. And as a word of introduction, what is literature review? Okay, this is what we want to start with. What is literature review? Basically, it has to do with the survey of everything that has been written around a particular topic or theory or research question you want to examine. You want to do a study. You have picked a topic and then you want to see what has been done around it, or you want to start a study but you have not yet picked a topic. You want to get direction. You could start literature review as a way of seeing what has been done around that your area of interest, so that it can guide the research you want to do. So it provides a background to the new work you want to do. It could be a typical literature review based on the topic you have already you are working on, or it could be that you are doing a preliminary search because you want to find something you can work on around a particular area of interest. An effective literature review has to do with summarizing a review of different research people have done and organizing it in a way that makes sense as a research of its own, as a standalone work. All right. And then why do we review literature? It helps us to discover what has been done around that topic of interest or area of interest. It helps to determine the contributions of each of the research work. You know, people have said so many things around what you want to work on. So you want to know the contribution of each person on that topic. And in doing that, it helps you to create a space to see what has not been done. All right. So it helps you to understand the relationship between the contributions of one author and another author, and possibly identify the contradictions if there exist such contradictions, or identify the common view they have, and then be able to watch out what they have not addressed in the course of doing their own research. That thing they've not addressed could become the research gap your own research is going to fill up. All right, so the basic requirements for literature review is that you need to identify your topic of interest. Even if you have not determined the topic, there should be an area of interest. If there is no area of interest, that could be like a preliminary search because you want to find area of interest. But how can you be searching something that there is no direction? It sounds funny, right? So you need to have a direction before you start literature review. Some supervisors will tell their students, you go and research, do literature review before you decide on the topic. Now, but even if you want to do that, there should be a direction. What area? For instance, in economics, we have different areas in economics. So you need to decide the direction you want to go, and then you can now do a comprehensive or a detailed literature review. Even if you are doing preliminary research, once that is established, you will still need to do a detailed literature review, which is what we want to discuss here. And to do it effectively, you have a topic, you have research questions or objectives that research is trying to achieve. We may have the same topic, but we are facing different questions. So that is why, apart from your topic, the research question objective is very, very important. And then in that research question or objective, it helps you to identify what we call core variables. Variables of key interest in that research. Those variables will also guide your literature review. All right? And then you now begin to search relevant literature. These are basic requirements. And if you want to search, you can search based on title or topics. If, for instance, the topic I'm looking at is what we have been reviewing in chapter 1, I'm looking at the impact of international trade on economic growth. I could just type that topic, international growth, impact of international growth on economic growth. Okay? Or I could use the key variables, international trade, economic growth. I could just type international trade and economic growth. A lot of literature will pop up, especially if you are searching online. If you go to a library, you'll be searching for material that have that as area of interest. You can also search based on authors. If there are specific authors who have worked on international trade, you can search them. or you search based on theory. If there are specific theories known, you can search according to that. You may also decide to search according to publications. There are journal publications that may be focusing on that particular area. You can pick up that journal and then search through that journal to see people, authors who have written things around your area of interest. You can also be searching based on topic and say, even though I'm searching based on topic, international trade and economic growth, I want to look at works, research done between the year 2000 and 2024. So I can specify the year of interest in my search. I may even specify the kind of document. For instance, I may type economic growth and international trade and put PDF. In that case, if it's online, the system will pop up all the PDF files related to that area. And I think I prefer it, because in most cases, you're able to see the information that will help you cite the material in question. All right? Now, this is a typical structure of chapter 2 in most projects in economics and related areas. It's typical because this is generic. In your area of interest, in your institution and department, try to find out the format required of you there and stick to that format. It's important. Project writing teaches you discipline. It's not all about what you want, but what the institution has designed. So it teaches you that discipline to work within that specified scope. Okay? So, but this is basically a generic format. In this generic, you have, apart from putting the title, chapter, literature review, or review of related literature, or whichever direction the specification required of you. In most cases, there is this kind of preliminary notes you write before you start the next point. Some people will put like 2.2 and say introduction or preamble. You see the way I cancelled it, because I do not recommend that you write this thing called introduction, except it's required by your institution. But you can introduce your work without specifying that thing. So under the title, literature review, you now put that introduction. I'll tell you what is expected there. Just wait, in the next same slide, you'll see it, what is expected here. And then after that, you now have the conceptual literature review, you have the theoretical literature review, you have the empirical literature review, you have the summary of what you have reviewed so far, especially in theoretical and empirical. And based on that summary, you save out what is called limitations of previous studies and knowledge gap. These knowledge gaps gives your research a sitting, a niche from where you are going to run. Okay, it shows you what gap that is left in what has been done, and that gap could be what your work should be filling up. If there is anyone that it will not fill up, you note it as an area of further study and recommend it as area of further studies. All right, so in that preliminary comment you put before you start 2.1, I still cancelled that title, because if you put that introduction, you already have introduction in chapter 1. It means that in your chapter 3, you still put introduction, and then you keep putting introduction. It makes the work not look very, very, very presentable. Okay? So you keep it that way and write that introductory note, that preamble, to introduce what chapter is all about. And this chapter 2, what is it all about? You tell your audience the purpose for writing this literature review. Make it brief, not a big grammar. The purpose for writing this literature review. To do that, you may want to point to the problem you want to solve. This, given the interest of this work, for instance, on international trade and economic growth, on economic growth, this work is designed to, this chapter is designed or reviews, related theories and related empirical research. And then, what is the scope of your review? In most cases, when you have finished your literature review and you are writing this chapter, you may want to tell the number of theories you reviewed or something like that, or that you reviewed empirical work within so and so period. Then, so you're talking about the amount of literature you found. So these are just basic lines, maybe 2, 3, 4 sentences to introduce that chapter, and then you enter into the next session, which is the conceptual literature review. Basically here, what you do is to first identify all the related concepts. All the related concepts, identify them. When you identify them, you are going to present each of them. Some people will begin to number them. I really don't encourage that. You rather make each of them a paragraph. And then in doing that, avoid one sentence paragraph. A paragraph should be at least 2 sentences. I see a lot of young researchers making that mistake. Please, even if it's one sentence that explains that, break that sentence into 2 if it must be a paragraph. Otherwise, join it in other paragraphs. Okay? So you avoid one sentence paragraph, all right? And then you cite the source of your information, even though it's definition. If it's not coming from your brain, you got that information somewhere. Cite the source of that information. And don't just include unrelated concepts because you want to impress anybody. Just stick to what is required. What is that concept that helps your reader understand things around this your project? So you identify them, put them in paragraphs and explain each of them. All right. Once you have done that, this session is done. The next session to do is your theoretical literature review. Look for theories related to that topic. Search it everywhere, in textbooks, in online publications and all of that. Search for those theories. You can search them based on theme. And then when you have searched for those theories, maybe you find 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 theories. Take the ones that are most related to your work. Maybe 5, maybe 6. All right? And then arrange them either in teams. You might arrange them based on thesis. Thesis is like the position of this theory, the position of this theory, the position of this theory. Okay? For instance, in that international trade and economic growth, somebody may decide to arrange it in terms of team to say, okay, this person believes that international trade, that this group of theories believe that international trade has positive relationship. There may be another group that believe that it has negative impact on economic growth. So you can arrange them based on theme, or you arrange them based on chronological order. The theory that came first, the next theory that came, the next theory that came, the next theory that came, or even advancement of theory. This person brought this theory, this person countered it, that's advancement of theory. The other person countered it, the other person countered. So you arrange them you take a particular order. Don't just put them randomly. You are trying to make your audience understand your direction. Okay? And each one you do, make sure you cite your source. In chapter 1 of this work, I have shown us how to cite work within the context of your literature review. Whether to say according to this, and then put the year in bracket, or put the author and the year in bracket. Check chapter 1, you see that. Okay? Now, in most cases, if you do this theoretical literature review well, the most related theory, the theory most related to your thesis or to your objective, will become the theoretical framework of your model in your chapter 3. So after discussing it in details, in chapter 3, the first part of chapter 3, you lift up that theory and refer to it again. And then try to sieve out the variables that it throws up as it relates to your model. And then when you throw it up, before you start expanding that model for your analysis. All right? Then the other part is your empirical literature review. Empirical literature review is basically the quantitative research, all the analysis, the projects people have done, thesis people have done, journal paper people have done, using quantitative approach, throwing up figures. Okay, throwing up figures to do this kind of thing. All right, and then you want to also arrange them in an order. Choose a particular organizational style. It could be chronologically, based on an interest, development of interest, or you may want to say year of publication. I may be interested in reviewing, which I think I prefer for my students. If you are doing a work in 2024, empirically, except where it becomes important, don't refer to very, very far projects that have been done in the 80s. Most people that did in the year 2000 would have reviewed those work. So try to look for empirical literature review done in the recent years. But I said where it becomes necessary, you can refer to the one that has been done very far ago. Otherwise, you can look at work that has been done between the year 2000 and 2024. Even the current year you are writing, people have been publishing in that area. Look for those theories. So you can arrange them based on, okay, this is the oldest, the next one, the next one. So somebody can be seeing the work coming the way, as it is. Alternatively, you can arrange your work based on trend. Like for instance, in this context, you can arrange your work. For instance, I encourage my students. You may want to. I'm working on international growth and international trade and economic growth in Nigeria, for instance. You may want to review literature that has been done outside your continent. So you look at those that have been done in Asia, in Europe, in other continents. Pick those literature. Okay, review them within, that are current literature. Then you look at literature that has been done within Africa. This sounds very chronologically. Within Africa, okay, outside your region. Maybe we're in West Africa. Leave out West Africa. Search for those that have been done in other regions of Africa, and then narrow down to what has been done within West Africa. Then after reviewing that, narrow down to what has been done in your own country. So you have like 4 layers, order here. Outside the continent, within the continent, but outside your region, within your region, but outside your country, and then within your country. So it helps you to narrow down, so that you're able to find out the gap in your own country, since you are doing country-based research. But if you are doing a cross-country based research, you can also keep it at that level. Okay, so you can also arrange this your empirical literature review based on objectives or interaction, of the core variables. For instance, international trade and economic growth. Somebody can decide to review imports and economic growth, and review that alone, and review export and economic growth, and review that alone, and then review the work that has to do with import and export together, and review that, and becomes like 3 other. All right? Or you can arrange it based on methods. People used this kind of method to do their research. These people use this kind of method to do somebody used descriptive, somebody used them inferential but OLS, somebody used them inferential but augmented Dicafula, what do you call it? Augmented, what do you call it? Autoregressive display like model. Somebody used this kind of model but used the VAR model or VEC model and all of that. You can arrange based on methodology that has been used for that work. That could be your order. But the important thing is that somebody reading your literature review should be able to identify an order in that work. And that makes it a brilliant job. Okay? Now, when it comes to empirical literature review, you may need to consult so many papers. And the question here is, how do you read so many papers quickly? I'll give you a hint. And then I'll show you practically how I do my own. The unfortunate truth is that academic papers in economics tend to be very long. If you pick one journal article, you may be seeing some of them like 12, 14, 15, 16 pages. Okay? And sometimes very boring. So how do you go around this? The good news is that each of these papers you are looking at has main gists in the abstract. So when you pick any paper to look at and you see the title and it looks interesting, the next thing to check out is the abstract. Check the abstract of the work. If the abstract is something that catches your attention, that looks like what you are looking for, then you can dive deeper in reading that work. And in diving deeper, you quickly go to the introduction. The introduction is often enough to give you the main idea of the work. If the paper becomes so relevant, so interesting, you glance through the major sections. You may not read all of the paper, except where it becomes so important for you. You look at the major sections, and what do I mean by major section? You quickly look at the method that was, you look at the objective, you look at the method that was used, you look at the tables and the figures presented. They tell the story. Okay? If it becomes so interesting, you may want to read the whole paper. And that may be one out of many papers you have chosen. All right? As you read any paper, or glance through any paper, check out the abstract and take notes. Look at the introduction and take notes. Look at the method, take notes. You will need these notes, and I'll show you where you will need these notes. Now, after taking after considering so many papers, I'll show you how you consider so many papers at the same time. How do you make sense from all of them? After you have taken your notes, sometimes after taking those notes, I now try to organize my notes in a way that I want to present it. So all the notes I've taken, they are scattered. I'll now begin to assemble them together the way I want them to appear. And sometimes I may even copy some of those work verbatim at that point of taking notes. But when I now want to present my work, I will now begin to put them in my own language, what I understood from that work, yet I cite the work. All right, so arrange the notes in the preferred order. The good thing also I need you to note is that most of these good papers you are looking at, additionally, they have their own literature review inbuilt in the work, either at a different session called literature review or entrenched in the introductory part. So if you also look at it, you may find something very attractive there. And that is where we begin to say, I'm looking at the work of Ojide 2023. And Ojide 2023 has a literature review. And that literature review includes the work of Obi 2021. So if I pick that work, that's where I begin to, when I now cite it, I now finish citing it, I will say, according to Obi 2021, as cited in Ojide 2023. Okay? And then I'll present that discussion. So you can learn from the review of literature of different works, but don't copy all the literature review of one work and put in your work. That will be academic fraud. It's called plagiarism. But when I've consulted many literature and picked the bits and bits I need from all of them and make new sense, it becomes fantastic literature review. It becomes research. All right? So note that in some places, you will be required to include a tabular summary of your empirical literature review, showing the author's name and the year of publication, showing the location of the study, the topic, the variables that were used in the model, the method of analysis, and the key findings. I personally recommend that table should be at the abstract, at the appendix. But if your department or institution require it within the body of the work, put it in a way that looks very simple to understand. Don't carry the whole summary and put inside that cell. That makes it too long and very difficult to understand. You can even use like formula. This person found that there is what they call positive impact on economic growth. That positive impact can be represented with greater than sign, okay, or sign of plus, okay, in terms of relationship, so that you don't put the whole sentence in a table. That table should be as simple as possible. All right, let me show you a practical step on how I do my own. If, for instance, I pick a topic I want to research on, the first thing I do is that I open a folder. I open a folder and I title that folder the project I'm working on. And I'll begin to browse topics around that area. I put normally I'll put PDF at the end of the title I'm browsing. If it's international trade and economic growth, I'll put PDF. If I'm interested in the year 2025, I can put 2024 at the end. And search online on Google, many publications will pop up. PDF, because it helps me to get the publication year and all the indices I need to cite the work. Then I start downloading as many of them I can download. Look at this folder here. You see many of the things I downloaded here because I needed it to do something. I was working on something on entrepreneurship education. And then I downloaded plenty of them here. Okay. This is about 56. Okay. Let me show you another one. This is another one. I was working on something that has to do with government security and the economy. Government expenditure on security and the economy. I downloaded a lot of things there. And then I opened this file where I will begin to drop my information. Word file. When I am reading each of them or scanning through them, what catches my fancy, I will drop them on a Word file, a Word document. Let me show you a third one. Okay, this is this one now. Okay, I downloaded things I needed on social mobilization because I was working on a particular research. You see, some points. Okay, I just open this Word file and say some points. These points are things that would help me to understand. That's where I put my note. You see the way I color this? These are the points. This is the point from this particular work. This is what I'm going to use to cite it. And then this is the main gist here from the perspective of the. So, and then you go down again. I use this to separate that this is a new session I'm coming. So this is an old one, as in this is a previous one. Okay, and then this is a new point I'm raising. So I've used this thing to draw a line. Then that's how. So I open those files, those PDF files. I may open 4, 5, 6 at a point. You see, this is a new point. This is the information I will need. So don't lose what you will need to cite the work when you are doing your literature review. Keep it somewhere. Okay, and then this is another line separating this old one. Okay, and then if you go down, you see that way. So the point I'm picking, see what I'll use for the citation. Then this is showing you a new line. If I use normal dash, it will draw a straight line, which I don't want. It will draw a line, and I don't want that line. I want to be able to not to start having issue when I want to copy this citation and this copying line. I can put a space and do it this way to show that I'm done with that session and I'm doing another session. You see another point I'm making here. I picked this note. These notes are colored like this by me because they are picked verbatim from the work. So I can't carry this way to my work. If I do, it's plagiarism. When I now read this session, after all scanning through the whole work of maybe 50 something, publications, and now extract what I need like this, working on this, I could sit down. I don't open the PDF files again except it becomes necessary. I'll now, you see the citation for this. Okay, I'll work on it till I finish. You see another citation. That way, that's how I pick all my work. See this citation for this one, so that's how I do it. And if you do it this way, you won't have challenge. When I want to do it, I now arrange this session, put them together the way I want them to appear in order. And when that is done, it becomes easier to run my literature review. Okay, by the way, that last one I show you has been published. This is where it's published. This is high ranking journal, the Journal of Socio-Economic Planning Sciences. It's been published here since 2000 and what again? I think I got this file when it was in print. Okay, so when you do it this way, it becomes easier for you. That was accepted in 2022. Okay, so you need to be able to look at these things. If you follow this way, literature review becomes easier for you to do. All right, and then after your literature review, you do a summary of the literature review. The summary, you can tell the audience how many theories you reviewed, and then the key points you found out. You may want to share your own view based on the theory. If you have a theory to suggest, it becomes interesting to put it there. And then the empirical, how many you reviewed. If I did it based on continent and country, I can show you that this number were reviewed outside the continent, and this number was reviewed within the continent outside the region. This number was reviewed within the region, and this number was reviewed within the country. All right, when I have done that, I will now come to what is called limitations of previous studies. And in that limitations, you show the gap that has been established. And there are possible research gaps. 8 of them I want to show you. The first one is evidence gap. Evidence gap is where there are contradictions. Author 1 is saying it has positive impact. Author 3 is saying it has negative. Author 3 is saying there is no impact. That becomes evidence gap. So you point out evidence gap based on the discussion. All right. So I'll say some of the authors agree that it has positive impact. If I say it like that, some of the authors, I'll open a bracket and list the authors with their year. Maybe there are 6. I said the other authors say they have negative impact. I will open a bracket and list those authors. Other authors, the third group, say there is no impact. I'll open a bracket and list them. All right, so that becomes an evidence gap. Since there is this contradiction, this gap, my own is to contribute to that debate. It makes my work relevant. Another gap to watch out for is what we call knowledge gap. Knowledge gap is where what you are expecting as a result is not found at all in any of the literature you have reviewed. This is quite rare. And then there is practical knowledge gap, where what is happening in the real life is not connected with the theory. So, for instance, we in economists believe that once price increases, demand will reduce. But it was practical knowledge gap that showed somebody that in some goods, why price is increasing, demand is increasing. So that's practical gap. Then there is theory, methodology gap. People are using a particular method to do that research. You are introducing a new method, a combination of two different methods that have been used in the past, and that becomes the method gap. The fifth one is empirical gap. Empirical gap is where there is the existing finding or positions of researchers need to be re-evaluated. For instance, in Philip Koff's theory, speculates that shows that there is inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. That more inflation is increasing. Okay, if you want to reduce inflation, unemployment is increasing. If you want to reduce unemployment, inflation is increasing. That's a theory somewhere. Somebody may want to verify whether it's applicable in Nigeria. That was actually my first degree work. All right, so you can also look at theoretical gap, where the desired theory doesn't exist. So based on your review, you can come up with a new theory. You can look at population gap, where there is somebody did a particular research on women involvement on labor force, but use small population, small sample size, or did not include all the necessary population, and that becomes the gap you identify, and your own research is filling up that gap. Or scope gap, where this work has been done in US, in Europe, in Asia, but it's not been done in Africa or in your country. That becomes geographical gap or data gap, where people have done this research and the last that has been done was done in the year 2000, and then this is 2024. There has been a gap which your own research will want to fill. Okay, and then once you have been able to establish that limitations, in summarizing that limitations, you quickly summarize your findings. That's what I pointed out earlier. Identify the gap and provide the rationale for your own research. If there are gaps your research is not going to fill up, you can point it out as part of recommendation for further research. But in one of those gaps you establish, your own research will be answering that question. Important hints as we summarize this discussion. Be selective in what you are going to review. Don't carry all the papers and begin to review. You bore yourself and get frustrated. Use only the most important points from all the sources you have gotten. All right? Don't use a lot of quotations in your literature review. Paraphrase it and then cite your source. And in paraphrasing it, be careful to avoid the challenge or problem of plagiarism. And then use a clear structure, style, or format. Your supervisor, your institutions may be able to guide your discipline, may tell you what to do. And then make sure you do enough citation of every work you have used and prepare your references. We will be discussing how to organize references based on different formats. Okay, watch out for that video. So this is basically what you do. All right, and then in summary, just a recap. This is what your chapter 2 looks like. You write the title, the chapter 2, the title, and then you blow small grammar or you state small grammar. This Nigerian guy talking. You blow small grammar, you state small grammar to introduce the session. Whether you put introduction or you don't put introduction, which I don't think is necessary. You indicate what this session is all about and then carry out these assignments here. And when you have done it, you would have succeeded in preparing a very fantastic, good literature review that will give your work a good backup for you to do a very fantastic job. On that note, I want to say a very big thank you for joining us in this session. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. All right, I'm sure you appreciate what I'm doing here. Subscribe for this channel and you keep getting an update automatically. Thank you very much and God bless you. Cheers.